My name is Juan Wulff, entering first year at Harvard College, hoping to study English and government. I'm an immigrant from Venezuela. I immigrated to Boston when I was 8 years old, and that immigrant identity trails into everything I do. I'm very passionate about immigrant justice and immigrant advocacy, and I've pursued that through mostly the passions of writing and other methods.
Perfect. Perfect. When people find out you got into Harvard, what's the first assumption they make about you that's completely wrong?
Hmm. That's a great question. I think that most definitely that there was one thing that made or break my application, or one thing that is superhuman about me that made it so I received the opportunity to attend the university. I was just at a conference helping rising high school seniors with their college application process. And the question that I got over and over again was, what is it that got you into Harvard? What did you do? What extracurricular? What essay? Like, what standout thing did you do? And I think that I'm proud of what I've done, but the way of getting admitted into these universities, one, it's not only very complex, but in that complexity, you ultimately admit a person. The admissions officer admits a person. So I think that, although, it's funny and I think comforting for people who are applying to college that I just got into the universities that I got into because of one thing. I think that these universities look for someone to put on their campus, therefore they're going to admit a person to put on their campus. And I think that in approaching the application process, I use that to my leverage, and I think that's what made the difference, not one extracurricular or accomplishment.
How should they go about portraying that originality rather than just chasing the fluff?
So yeah, and when it comes to terms to pursuing originality, I really do think that the answer for chasing originality in a college application and chasing originality in life do not deviate, are not, different answers. I do feel as if you approach your life and what you do with authenticity, with what you're passionate about, with the communities you care about, and you do it well. So you do put effort into it. So you authentically and effort, you don't lie that you put in effort, you actually do the work and the sustenance. I think that is what births originality. Because when I reflect upon my own story, I think about, all these different things I was able to accomplish. All of them originated from passion and ended in action, right? So I really do think I really do feel as though when they're admitting a person, they're admitting a unique person. So I do feel as, not maybe worrying about the activities or the grades or the SAT scores or the location or the high school they attended of other applicants is almost freeing and an advantage in college admissions because it allows you to truly be yourself. And if you put in the work, because again, you have to put in the work. If you put in the work, you will reach a really beautiful and accomplished version of the originality. I really do not believe that originality and accomplishment are two separate values.
Makes sense. Perfect. Okay. I think there's this idea that Harvard only accepts superhuman teenagers who've
Mhm.
already changed the world. To what extent do you think that's true?
So I think when reflecting upon this question, like you should be reflecting when applying to any college or anything in life, is what are you entering to and what are you leaving that thing you're entering to as? So I really do thoroughly believe that when these college and universities look at an application, they're not looking to admit the most accomplished people. They're looking to admit the people who will bring in the most to their campus and that will take out the most of their campus. So if bringing the most and taking out the most means being a low income high schooler from an underprivileged high school who worked their butt off for like their 1450 and has done things in their community to help, even if they didn't win national awards, that's something they want to bring into their campus because they know when that person gets the Harvard education, when they get the connections, when they gain the confidence, when they're surrounded by other people who want to do great things, those people will accomplish great things after Harvard. And that's the case with every single university. A university ultimately is admitting its future when it admits a high schooler. That's the truth. And it's admitting the people who will take advantage of its university and its extracurricular and programs. And it's also admitting a person who they hope will go on to do great things. So I do not think that these universities, especially Harvard, like are looking for superhuman teenagers. What I do think they're looking for is people who have shown interest in paving change and that will bring that interest to Harvard to pave change and then when they leave Harvard, will continue using that Harvard education to pave even more change. So that's why you don't see super like intelligent kids who do extracurriculars getting into Harvard. That's also why you don't see um, kids who don't do any school and are very lazy, but then have a couple like crazy startups, like they make a ton of money going to Harvard. I really do think that if I think a lot of people know that Harvard is a prestigious academic institution.
Hmm.
They're looking for people who will take advantage of the academic institution and explode.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. I feel like everyone assumes the Harvard kids had like perfect puts and 1600 SATs. What does your transcript look like?
Yeah, so I won't specifically enumerate all the details just because I think that GPA is such a relative thing because it depends on how your high school calculates it and the people that go to your high school and where your high school is located. And it's because of that reason that I really don't think that these numbers matter as much as people think. I think I was barely top 10 in my class, my graduating class. And I still had stellar college performances, arguably better than those above me in the class, because I had a strong academic record, so mostly A's, no B's. And then my SAT score, I went to a relatively, a little more privileged of a high school, Catholic Jesuit high school. I had a 1510. But again, it's not a perfect score. It wasn't a perfect GPA. I got A minuses. I got threes on AP exams. I don't think, obviously, I had a poor academic record. Let me be very clear. But I think that I was not chasing perfection. I was chasing excellence beyond the classroom as well. So, yeah, I think that I'd be happy to share my transcript, but I think that people think it, overvalue it, and don't see the real reason why these colleges actually care about your transcript.
How many times did you sit for the SAT? Or was it like the only one?
Yeah, so that 1510 was a super score. I got a 1490 on a single test, and then that 1510 was super scored. I took the SAT two on paper and one online, but I got the 1510 super score after taking my second paper version. The online one I did poorly because I didn't really study for. Yeah, so I do think that SAT score is obviously impressive. I think it's hard to attain. I put in effort to attain it, but I think that the SAT is, it's a standardized test. It's a game rather than a test of intelligence. So I think that obviously you are of benefit if you go to a privileged high school where you take advanced math modules and you have a tutor. I think that's a benefit for the SAT. But I also think that any score is attainable with effort, but I wouldn't over stress about getting a perfect score. I think anything above a 1450, you're in the running. In certain cases, if you go to a much better or worse high school, it might lower, it might go up. So there is really no.
Okay. Perfect. Let's move on from academics and let's talk about extracurriculars now. So my first question would be, when did you realize that normal high school activities weren't going to cut it for somewhere like Harvard?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good question because often the echo chamber of your school can be small, it can be limited, it can be restricting. And oftentimes your community outside of your school has a lot of potential for change than your school, right? At school, you're kind of constrained to extracurriculars and an adult mentor and school policies. And unless you're very into like education politics, I think looking to do things in your community, whether it's volunteering or, helping out or doing any sort of work that puts your passions into action and improves your community, I think is fantastic. And I think it does show that you're willing to do what is necessary to help your community. You're not restricted by limits. You're willing to think outside of the box. And I think that I did my activities outside of the classroom because I really like them. And I think that definitely showed in my application and pulled me through.
Okay, perfect. Could you walk us through one or two of your activities that you think impressed Harvard admissions officers the most?
Yeah, so I'll take you through two of them. So first of all, I did journalistic research at the U.S. Mexico border through a grant,
Mm-hmm.
and then with that, I produced photo journals, videos, published articles, and incorporated a lot of classroom materials into my school. Actually, because of this, it was about a year of work doing different things and doing a lot of work. But I really do think what pulled me across the line is not only was this a unique solution and an actual solution to a real problem, not a formulated solution to a formulated problem. I think it was my passion. I think I was truly passionate about it, and I think the care I had for it and my reasons for doing it as an immigrant, as someone who cares about writing, who cares about human rights, I think that would definitely made an impact. Another extracurricular I think that was impressive was I was the editor in chief of my school's high school paper. And I think a lot of kids applying to these schools are their editor in chief or the president of their literary magazines or newspapers. But I think what made my take on that club unique is that I organized competitions between different schools. So we did a multi-school competition, writing competition to promote more writing in schools and promote creative writing in a generation that I think doesn't value writing enough. And then we also had multiple publications and we had events and we had opportunities for people to read their submissions at arts fests. So I think that that was impressive, not only because I put a lot of work into it and I really loved the writing, but also because I think I took it, that step above that, that cliche above and beyond.
So my follow-up question would be, if someone is looking to build like real impact, what advice would you give to them? Because I feel like the activities that are actually worth putting on your resume would be some kind of impactful activities.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. I think that the most impressive things are the things that had real impact because it showed that you cared and that you actually did something. You didn't just formulate a problem and formulate a fake solution. So I think that the advice I would give people is just to take action and take action at a real problem. The first piece of advice is don't think that you have to found something to make change. I think in a lot of areas there is already organizations addressing important needs. And although you might start at a small organization in your area as a volunteer, you can step up to higher leadership positions that I think can be equally as impressive. And you can also frame your volunteer work as impressive by showing the amount of people you impacted, the work you did, and other more specific details that show impact. Because often, if you start creating things, or if you try to create a nonprofit just to create a nonprofit, or if you try to find a problem and you just make up a problem, you're not actually making impact because there's nothing to impact. So that would be my first piece of advice. And the second piece of advice is just to take action. To get impact, you need to take action. And I think a lot of students worry about if their things will be effective, or if they're doing is enough, or if they're doing it the right way, when the only way you will accomplish something is by making a mistake, by stepping on that first hurdle. And the way to get somewhere is just to start taking action. So even if it's making an email or helping someone or making the website for your idea, any action that pushes you towards your goal is really important, even if it's infinitesimally small.
Perfect. Just totally agree with everything you said. Okay. Let's move on to the essays part. How would you say you made your essay unforgettable for Harvard's admissions officers?
That's a great question. I think that a lot of the essay part of the application seems like a window or an opportunity to give a wow factor or to give an exhilarating life story or to tell the tale of a great novelist. When in reality, there's nothing wrong with being normal. There's nothing wrong with having normal hobbies, normal interests, a normal life. And I think that a strong set, not essay, a strong set of essays, whether it's supplemental, the main essay, additional information section, a good set of essays tells a whole story. I think with especially the personal statement, a lot of people try to say everything. They try to say all their passions and all their hopes and all the things they want to do, when I think what made my essay good and what made my application strong is that in each individual essay, starting with the personal statement, I said one simple thing. So I didn't talk about my most impressive things in my personal statement. I told a story about who I was and what I cared about, and that was strong. And then when the officer would move on to my supplemental essays, for example, they would see an essay about one hobby and then one interest and then one other thing, and then as they read each individual essay, they got a lesson from each essay, and those lessons formed who I was and an impression of me. And rather than just kind of throwing random information of them in each essay and just trying to impress them desperately, I gave them a full picture. And giving them a full picture is what you want to do. So when they have to advocate for you in front of an admissions office, or when they have to decide if they should keep you as a person, right? They should keep the person they met in the set of essays or in the set of information. They shouldn't just keep one essay or one extracurricular that they found to be unforgettable.
I feel like a lot of your advice revolved around just being authentic to yourself. I guess my question would be, how do you be authentic while trying to impress the most prestigious university in the world?
Wow. I think that's a really cool way to frame it. I think that the way to keep yourself authentic when trying to be admitted into the best university in the world is to understand that to be admitted into the best university in the world, you have to be authentic, right? The key factor to getting into the best university in the world or the best universities in the world is to be authentic. Because when you're yourself, when you give simple, strong, powerful essays, when you show your extracurriculars that have real passion behind them and then real impact that follows, right? You're showing an original person. And that original person resonates because often I think we overcomplicate it. And if you think about it, right, if you're at dinner, for example, and someone comes up to you and they start formulating information about themselves and throwing all these things, you get kind of thrown off. You're like, who is this person? I don't feel like I know them.
Yeah.
But if someone comes up to you and just has a regular conversation and tells you about their hobby and then tells you about their accomplishment, right? It might be a big accomplishment, but if they say it humbly, if they say it in conversation, if they say it smoothly, if they're not trying to force it upon you, you love that person and you see them as a very unforgettable person. And that person might be some of the most accomplished person in the room, but you see them as a person, not an accomplished person, which I think is really it was what makes an application and a person impressive.
Like, did you ever catch yourself making something sound more dramatic rather than what it actually was?
No, no, definitely. I remember I wrote my personal statement and I tried to write about multiculturalism and being an immigrant. And I tried to, have this really profound message and be like super poetic and have scenes of me sitting and like looking out into the distance and thinking of how my identity and being puzzled and discerning. But it was really ineffective, if I'm being honest. It did not really to it didn't feel good. It didn't come out good. And I think it's when I centered myself about just talking about what my identity was, how it played out in the everyday and the simple things like the food I'm eating and the way I walk, the music I'm listening to, and how grateful I am for those small things. I think it actually, ironically, came out super poetic and beautiful and simple, and the message made sense.
Mhm.
That's an important thing. I think a lot of people write things that don't make sense because they don't know what they're writing about. They're just trying to have some big
Yeah.
idea when the big idea is just what you think.
Yeah, totally get what you mean. I found myself doing the same thing as well. Something with fancy words and everything, but it made no
Mhm.
sense. I was
Yeah, it
like,
makes no sense.
I'm just gonna connect with this. Okay, let's talk about the why Harvard essay.
Mhm.
How do you write about wanting to go to Harvard without sounding like every other person who wants to get into Harvard?
Yeah, so I think that the first thing about any question that's regarding why you want to go to a school is that you have to actually read it. I know that sounds super stupid, but you actually have to read the question. Because, for example, Yale does not ask you why you want to go to Yale. They ask you why you want to study your major, not at Yale, just in general. So if you start talking about classes at Yale or other things, they're going to be like, what is this guy talking about? I didn't ask him about that. I asked him why he wanted to study immigration or why he wanted to study English, not Yale. So that's the first. And then the Harvard essay is specific. What do you hope you get out of your Harvard education? It's not why you want to go to Harvard, it's what you hope you want to get out. So those really small details, I really think, one, just immediately make your essay better because there's a ton of kids who are just worried about just making it seem like they want to go to the school. Second piece of advice is that you actually want to go to the school. I think a lot of people say, oh, I would obviously want to go to Harvard, but do you actually want to go? Are you actually interested in the programs? Do you know what you're interested? Do you know a reason why? I think the why is critical in understanding why you want to go to school and will make your essays 100 times better. And then the third reason I would give is to give a clear plan of what you're going to do. Research well, pay attention to the question, and then show what you're going to do when you come to the university and what you're going to do when you leave the university. Very simple, right? Show them what you're going to do at the university and when you're going to get out. And I think if you do that simply, I think if it aligns with your unique passions, I think even if you have a little bit of authenticity in there. For example, I talked about how I wanted to play ultimate frisbee, and that has no academic contribution to Harvard at all, but I still talked about it. And I think that makes a really strong essay, a really compelling essay, and I really do think it gets the admission officer on your side.
Great advice. Okay, let's talk about the interview. So tell me about your Harvard interview. Was it as intimidating as everyone says, or was that just hype?
Well, I'll be honest. I really do not think the Harvard interview is as intimidating as people make it seem. They think of the scene in the movie where you sit in the admission officer's desk and they interview you and they're like, if you get this question right, you'll get in. It's really not like that. My interview was actually a little peculiar. I had it with a very wealthy man. I won't reveal a lot of details, but he was a very wealthy man and he had me come to a very high floor in a very nice building. I'm trying to speak in ambiguous terms. He had me come to a very nice building and a very high floor with a very, very beautiful view. This man, we didn't not, when I walked in, I immediately noticed that our beliefs politically did not really align, but I made the best of it. And I think that we had a really interesting interview because I spoke to him authentically. We had a good conversation and it ended up not being question, answer, but rather just conversation, kind of moving along, talking about different points. We touched politics, we touched personal life, we talked Boston, we touched a lot of things. And even though we were in this really intimidating place, and me and the guy definitely did not align in our political beliefs and values, we both really enjoyed each other's presence. And I have not read my report on the interview, and I think I will when I get to Harvard. So maybe I'll let you know the deets once I get there. But I really think the guy appreciated that I was an authentic kid and that I didn't take him too seriously as someone who was really wealthy, and that I was straight to his face and I told him what I believed. And I think that that went well.
Great. Was there any question that completely?
So honestly, I've heard of people getting these crazy weird questions before,
Yeah.
but I did not get a crazy weird question. We had a couple conversation, like very vague questions about, what you do, and he asked a bunch of follow-ups, kind of like what you're doing, but it really unfolded into just a conversation. At some point, there was no question. We were just kind of going back and forth, and we were talking politics. At that point, there was a lot of talk about the Panama Canal, so we talked a lot about that. So yeah, we went back and forth. We had a conversation, and I think that you hear that advice of like in your interviews, just try to have a conversation, and I think it's kind of hard to apply that. But what I would really my best way to kind of encourage that is just speak authentically. If they say something, ask a follow up question to them. Like if you give a really like powerful, passionate answer, ask them a follow up question to them. Be like, what do you think? I think that showing the interview is also about showing that you'd be a really cool person to be around at the dining hall or to see on the walk to school. So if you can show that you're, a chill person, um, in the interview, then I think it helps you a lot.
All right, perfect. Perfect. What did you sacrifice to be Harvard ready?
What did I sacrifice? I think that I sacrificed taking the easy way, and I think that sounds really corny. I don't like saying that, but I think it's not a bad way to put what I'm trying to get at. Is that I think that I had to be very organized. I think I'm someone who still really tried to live high school out and have fun and do things, but I did, make sacrifices, and I had priorities. I think that priorities are very important because priorities doesn't mean that priorities don't mean that things at the top of your priority list are ride or die, right? You can still do the things at the bottom of your priority list. It's just that some things come first. So, I would, have fun with my friends, but when it was time to send an email or when we were away and I had to do something, I would quickly open my computer and make sure I got to it. I think that it's tough. It's impossible to strike a balance. I don't think I did perfectly, but I think understanding what you want and what you have to do to get there, I think is the best way to answer that question.
Okay, moving on. What do you think is the biggest lie college counselors tell students about getting into Harvard?
Yeah, you need a spike. You don't need a spike. I think that's admission counselor propaganda because I think there is truth in it. I think all these myths have some truth in it. I think that it is really helpful if what you're doing and what you want to study and what your goals in life are aligned. That's not a bad thing. But the reason that's a good thing, it's because it shows that you're an authentic person, right? For example, I did immigration work because I was passionate about immigration, and I want to keep doing immigration work because I'm passionate about immigration. That shows that I do things for a reason and that I do them with care. But if you formulate a spike, if you make up the things that you like, if you just kind of, try to formulate an identity or an issue or a passion project, you're not really going to get anywhere. And maybe some people who do that get somewhere, but I really do think that it's much more effective to present yourself as a person. I think obviously you have to be qualified, but they're going to admit a qualified person, not a qualified fake identity that you made with a spike. I think there's nothing wrong with being well-rounded as long as that you show that what you do, you care about, and you pursue it, and you keep going at it.
The last question. One stat that you think that matters way less than people think for Harvard.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to go evidently the SAT. I think that GPA is important. I don't think you need to be number one in your class, but I do think that having a strong academic record shows that you care about school, and Harvard is an academic institution after all. But I really do think the SAT is completely misunderstood. Firstly, you don't need a 1600, and the SAT that someone looks for is not what's going to get you in. An SAT is not going to get you into any school. What it does is that it shows a certain academic ability. It's not a number that shows a specific academic ability. It's more context. So, for example, if you're, a kid from, rural Oklahoma that is, not as low income, chances of getting a high SAT score are a lot freaking lower. So a 1410, if your school's average is a 900 in rural Oklahoma or anywhere else, is really impressive because you got 500 points above your school's average. But if you're a kid from a really wealthy preparatory school, maybe your school's average is like a 1200. So, 1500 is 300 points, which is still impressive, but it's a lot less impressive than this kid from rural Oklahoma who made it work. So when it comes to the SAT, first of all, it's not going to get you in. They're just checking the SAT to make sure you have some sort of academic ability. And the way they check that academic ability is just through context. That's the simple truth. They look at your context and your SAT score, and that's how they determine if you pass. But again, you can also get in with a bad SAT score, just like you can get in with bad essays or a bad GPA. I think it's way too overstressed and misunderstood. And a lot of people spend way too much money on the SAT when it's not as important as people think.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think this is going to be immensely helpful for people who are looking to apply to Harvard.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really appreciate your time.
No, for sure.